2311 Racing could be headed to Ford in 2024, and StewartHaas Racing might downsize and sell as many as 2 charters by the end of this year. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR on the motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show sure you knows really quickly. We're going to go ahead by starting to talk about PsyApps. As it was announced yesterday morning that PsyApps will sponsor Ryan Sieg for the rest of the 2023 season. So basically, CMR Roofing was supposed to sponsor Ryan Sieg the whole entire year, but they've been having a little bit of legal stuff that's been going on. So PsyApps is taking over to sponsor Ryan Sieg. I think the paint scheme looks really awesome for this weekend. I'm really happy to see that PsyApps will be sponsoring Ryan Sieg for the rest of the 2023 season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kelly Foods. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday that Kelly Foods wants to expand its deal with Anthony Alfredo next year, including possibly developing a signature pasta sauce of his to be sold at grocery stores. This has been something I've been wanting for a very long time for Anthony Alfredo to have his own pasta sauce. I think this is really cool, and Kelly Foods, of course, has sponsored Anthony Alfredo for the last 2 years. They want to extend their partnership. I don't know if he'll be back at Beach Club Motorsports next year at this point, but still, really exciting to see that Kelly Foods is wanting to work with Anthony Alfredo. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NVD Tech. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that NVD Tech, that NASCAR is getting into the micro-betting sector of gaming, inking a deal with NVD Tech, a company that develops odds via AI and machine learning. This is definitely very interesting. Really interesting to see that NASCAR is kind of getting involved with AI. It seems like a new company. It's been kind of up and up. A lot of these companies can sometimes be scams. I think it's very interesting, though, that NASCAR is getting involved with a tech company like this. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daytona and Milwaukee purses. Every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockrass puts out the purse money for that. And according to Bob Pockrass, for the Cup race, it's $8,778,583. For the Xfinity race, it's $1,640,749. And for the Truck race, it's $644,030. Pretty interesting purse money. Obviously, the Cup Series has the most because they have the charter system. You also have extra entries this weekend as there's 39 cars in the Cup Series field this weekend. Xfinity has got some pretty good purse money, and the Truck Series has not the greatest purse money in the world, but I think it's not too bad. But that is the purse money for this weekend at Daytona International Speedway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about door foam. As it was reported by Bob Pockrass yesterday that NASCAR has updated a rule on door foam and the damage vehicle policy to say it must be frequently retained by original door panel. A big reason why I think this rule is coming into place, because if you watched NASCAR Xfinity Series race last week at Watkins Glen, you saw a bunch of door foam coming out of John Hunter Nemechek's car. He got black flagged and had to come to pit road. Door foam is really required for safety reasons, because if you don't have door foam there, you could get seriously hurt with a hit. Despite the cars being a lot safer than they are, that door foam is to keep it really safe. So I think it's a really good decision that NASCAR has updated this rule. I'm not surprised they have updated this rule. And again, it doesn't shock or surprise me that these rules have been updated because NASCAR wants to keep it very consistent. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chad Fincham. As it was announced on Wednesday that Chad Fincham will drive a 08 for SS Greenlight Racing for 3 races. He'll race at Darlington next week, then he'll race at Bristol in a couple weeks, and then he'll race at Martinsville, which will be the second to last race of the Xfinity Series season. Chad Fincham is someone who has not really ran full-time in a very long time. I think the last time he raced full-time was either 2017 or 2018. He's, of course, been running part-time. He's made select Cup starts in the past as well, and has also made, I think, a few Xfinity Series starts so far in the 2023 season. Chad Fincham may not be the greatest driver in the world, but I think this is a good opportunity for Chad Fincham, though I will say SS Greenlight Racing has been struggling in the 2023 season, but I think a big reason why Chad Fincham is driving his car is because of the fact he's got sponsorship and funding. So hopefully Chad Fincham can do really good with this ride, have a strong run, and we'll see what happens. But good luck to him, and hopefully he can do a really good job with the team at SS Greenlight Racing. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Haas F1. As it was announced yesterday early morning that Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg are going to be returning to Haas F1 in 2024, continuing F1 silly season. This is not shocking or surprising that Kevin Madison and Nico Hülkenberg are returning to Haas next year, considering the fact that both drivers, I believe, have been doing a really solid and really good job with the organization this year. I don't know if they've scored any points here. I think they may have scored a few points. Both of them have. Nico Hülkenberg has shown some really strong promises in qualifying, and Kevin Madison's also shown that as well. But they have seen the struggle throughout the entire race. But I think Haas F1 is finally starting to show a little bit more pace, and they're showing a little more confidence on the track. So hopefully, going into 2024, we continue to see that major signs of improvement, and the team can perform a lot better headed into the 2024 season. Because let's be honest, I think at this point, it's basically Verstappen and basically everyone at Red Bull versus basically the rest of the grid. So hopefully in the future, Haas can become a much stronger and a much better organization. But it's cool to see that Kevin Madison and Nico Hülkenberg are going to return to Haas F1 in the 2024 Formula One season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Marcus Ericsson. A silly season for IndyCar has officially begun, as Marcus Ericsson will be leaving Chip Ganassi at the end of the 2024 season, and he'll be joining Andretti Autosport in 2024. Now, sponsorship and the number that he'll be driving has not been announced at this point. Marcus Ericsson has been driving for Chip Ganassi Racing since the 2021 or 2022 season. Will be leaving to go to Andretti Autosport. This has been rumored for a very, very long time. Really, the rumors circulating think back in May, during the month of May, that Marcus Ericsson had been looking to leave. And a big reason, from what I understand, is because he was looking for more pay and looking for more sponsorship. Look at Colin Herta. I believe Colin Herta is still the most paid IndyCar driver currently at the moment, and Andretti has a lot of money as they're looking at making a Formula One team, even though, and of course they've got sponsorship at Gamebridge, and of course they're looking to get into NASCAR. Andretti is at this point. But I think this is a really big pickup for Andretti Autosport because Marcus Ericsson's had a really good career at Chip Ganassi the last 2 years. He's gotten a few wins. He's won 2 races in 2021. He also won the Indy 500 2022, was an outside championship threat there. Also won the St. Pete Grand Prix in 2023. So I think this is a really good pickup for Andretti. I think he'll be a championship threat and contender, and hopefully he can go there and really help out the organization and maybe also go there and help Colin Herta as well, because at times Andretti get, because I don't think Andretti has won a race yet in the 2023 season. So I think Marcus Ericsson will be a championship contender threat. The big question is, will he be in the 28 or 29? Devon DeFrancesco will not be returning to that team next year, and we also know it's uncertain if Romain Grosjean is going to return to Andretti, though a lot of people, including myself, hope he gets another chance and opportunity to drive for Andretti, because in the beginning of the year, he was a championship contender, but he has fallen off in the last few weeks. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that, but nonetheless, really happy to see that Marcus Ericsson has arrived for 2024, and it's going to be with the Andretti Autosport organization. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, as both of them have a new sponsor, as Morgan & Morgan has signed a multi-race and multi-year partnership with Richard Childress Racing. I believe Kyle Busch is going to be sponsored at Darlington next week, and Austin Dillon will be sponsored at multiple other races as well with Morgan & Morgan. This might be the biggest sponsor that Kyle Busch has gotten since M&M's, but this is absolutely a huge story for many reasons because, again, it is a new sponsor coming into the Cup Series. If I'm not mistaken, Morgan & Morgan, they have not sponsored in the NASCAR Cup Series yet. Now, they have sponsored in the Truck and Xfinity Series with Chris Hacker, but Chris Hacker right now is out indefinitely due to basically getting arrested for DWI. I think this is really awesome to see they're leaving to go to RCR and basically working with the team going into next year, starting this year as well. I love that we got new sponsors coming into the Cup Series. Kyle Busch had also a lot of funding in other companies that have worked with him as well this year. Obviously, Mark III Vans. He's also had McLaren Custom Grills come into play. And he's also had the other sponsors like 3 Chai come into play, among other companies that have sponsored Kyle Busch this year. I think this is really, really awesome and very happy nonetheless to see that Kyle Busch continues to bring new sponsors and funding, as it obviously was story that basically the reason Kyle Busch was basically let go from Joe Gibbs Racing is because of the sponsor game, which I think a lot of people call BS on that. I don't know if it's completely true or not. I think it's somewhat true that sponsors were a major, major issue, but I think there were other factors, including the fact that Ty Gibbs, who'd been really good in the Xfinity Series, who's also much cheaper, was going to be much cheaper to get to the Cup Series. So I think that's another major thing to look at. But nonetheless, Kyle Busch is going to be getting new sponsors. Really awesome and really great stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Austin Dillon. Now, yesterday, Austin Dillon had a one-on-one conversation with Bob Poppers. And Austin Dillon spoke about Kyle Busch and bringing him into Richard Childress Racing and said it was really, really great to bring Kyle Busch in. But he also mentioned something about him caring about the organization. And he says that everyone knows where his heart is and wants Richard Childress Racing to succeed. Now, Bob Parks did another question that was put in another video that he posted on Twitter, but basically asked Austin Dillon how long is he going to race at Richard Childress Racing. Well, Austin Dillon said he wants to be with the team for a very long time racing. Now, Austin Dillon, from what I understand, he revealed this last year at the College press conference about a year ago, but he revealed that he has a contract with RCR currently through the 2025 season. Now, keep this in mind, Austin Dillon by the end of 2025 will be 35 years old. I think in the short term, he's going to stay and continue driving that number 3 car. My guess, he probably races until the end of the decade. But I think inevitably in the future, Austin Dillon is inevitably going to eventually become a higher up at the organization and basically work as like the CEO of the team because Rich Schultz is getting older. And Mike Dillon, well, I think he'll eventually become maybe the president of the team as well. I think Austin Dillon will eventually become an executive and make really big decisions because despite how people feel about Austin Dillon, I will agree that basically Austin Dillon is a major factor why the team has gotten better, at least bringing Kyle Busch in. So nonetheless, I think it's really cool that Austin Dillon has helped bring Kyle Busch in, and I think that that's one of the good things that Austin Dillon's done. Because if he has done a lot of great things, I certainly think the move to bring Kyle Busch in might be one of the best moves that he's ever made. He may be one of the more overhated drivers. Yes, he hasn't done great this year, but I also blame Keith Rodner for being a terrible crew chief. But nonetheless, I do agree that Austin Dillon has helped do some good things with RCR. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Watkins Glen TV ratings. According to Adam Stern, USA got a 1.3 rating and 2.31 million viewers for Sunday's NASCAR race at Watkins Glen. That is down from a 1.49 rating and 2.6 million viewers last year. Now remember, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, last year's Watkins Glen race, I believe, may have been on NBC compared to this race that was on the USA Network. And having 2.31 million viewers on a cable channel is not that bad, all things considered. From what I understand as well, I believe 24% of the viewership was in the key demographic, which actually is not that bad as well. Seeing ratings down is not the greatest thing, don't get me wrong, but I also think having back-to-back road courses doesn't help either. I think that's a huge factor because, let's be honest, I don't think people like watching back-to-back road courses. And it wouldn't surprise or shock because this race also got done before the peak viewership because tends to be that around that 5 o'clock Central Standard Time range that you tend to have more people tune in, and you didn't have that major boost that was really going to help out because the Cup race was like, 1 hour and 58 minutes long, so it was a very, very short race, and it was also in USA Network, and you also had a lot of preseason games going on for the NFL, and a lot of people do watch preseason because football is basically king. And I think that's going to be affecting this week because a lot of areas are going to be blacked out because this race, of course, is going to be NBC, and you have a lot of preseason games going on Saturday night as well. All things considered, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but I think there's been some overreaction to the ratings. Again, I think having back-to-back road courses doesn't help, but I do think ratings will be up a little bit for this weekend's race at Daytona. But nonetheless, these are the TV ratings for this weekend, and while they're not the greatest TV ratings in the world, it certainly isn't the end of the world. The TV ratings are where they're at currently at the moment, and personally, I'm not too mad about the TV ratings at this current moment. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Dye. Now, we talk about this on the channel on Wednesday, but it was announced Wednesday morning that GMS Racing is going to be shutting down their Truck Series team. And we were wondering what was going to happen to the drivers that are driving for GMS Racing. Well, Daniel Dye on Wednesday evening put out a tweet thanking GMS for everything they've done this year, and he says he already has a contract signed for 2024. Now, from what I understand, Daniel Dye's father does work in the industry. I think he works at Daytona International Speedway, if I'm not mistaken. So he has connections in the industry. So a big question now is where will Daniel Dye go heading into 2024? Because I'm going to be perfectly honest. I do think Daniel Dye does have a lot of talent. He's won an ARCA race before. But Daniel Dye has been kind of underwhelming, in my opinion, probably the worst performer of the 3 drivers at GMS Racing this year. But with him having connections with the NASCAR Foundation, among other things, that is a major reason why he does have a right going into 2024. So now back to the big question. Where is he going to be heading in 2024? Well, I think there's a few options. I think he's going to be in the Chevy camp next year. Maybe Rev Racing, perhaps. Rev Racing does have one truck currently at the moment that they have with Nick Sanchez. Nick is returning to Rev Racing in 2024. So that could be a possibility. What about KBM? There's that second KBM truck that's available. Jack Wood has not been announced he's returning. Yes, Kyle Busch is returning next year to run 5 races. But Jack Wood, he hasn't been confirmed, but we do know that Chase Purdy is going to be back in the Ford truck because he's also got sponsorship and funding. Maybe that second KBM truck, or maybe if they bring a third KBM truck, that's certainly possible. What about the one of the McAnally-Hilgeman trucks? I heard a rumor that maybe Christian Eckes could be going to Xfinity. That's one I heard a little bit back. So maybe he goes to McAnally-Hilgeman Racing. But with him having connections in the industry, it does surprise or shock that Dillon Dye is going to have a ride heading into 2024. And while I do agree that Dillon Dye has not been too impressive, I certainly think he does deserve a chance and opportunity to prove himself once again. Again, we'll see where he ends up heading in 2024. It's going to be very interesting because I think silly season is going to continue to get crazier and crazier. But I would expect that Dillon Dye will be in the Truck Series next year. I'm not expecting him to be going to Xfinity. I don't think he's proven himself to go to Xfinity at this point. I think if anyone deserves from that team, it's Roger Carruth. I think Roger's done a solid job. And again, I know people say, oh, Roger's been bad this year and he's been mediocre. Well, Roger's shown some signs of improvement this year. He was contending for wins at points here. Go back to that Darlington race that happened earlier this year. Nonetheless, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens and where Dillon Dye ends up going in 2024. We'll find out what happens with that in the foreseeable future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trevor Bayne. Now, there's been rumors and rumblings circulating that Trevor Bayne was going to return to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2023. Well, those rumors are officially true. Trevor Bayne is going to be driving the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing for 3 races with Interstate Batteries sponsoring. He'll be racing tonight at Daytona National Speedway in the 19 car, then he'll race at Bristol Motor Speedway, and then he'll race at Texas Motor Speedway. All 3 of those tracks, Trevor Bayne is historically very, very good at. But I am so stoked and so happy, nonetheless, see that Trevor Bayne is coming back to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Because remember last year, Trevor Bayne, I didn't know how he was going to do with Joe Gibbs Racing. And to be perfectly honest, he was really, really good. He had a lot of top 5s, led laps. I remember Auto Club, especially where he led laps in that race, had one of the fastest cars there. He was really strong at Phoenix early in the year, leading laps there. And he was really fast at a lot of the races we ran in 2022. And it was disappointing here he wasn't, at least at the time, going to be back for 2023. But I am very happy to see that Trevor Bayne is going to be back for 3 races. And honestly, I think he can win all 3 races. Wouldn't surprise or shock me if he wins tonight at Daytona, though I still think Austin Hill right now is the current favorite to go ahead and win that race. You then have Bristol. Trevor Bayne, that's his home racetrack. I circled that race. He ran really good with GMS, I think, in 2020. So I think that Trevor Bayne has a really good chance to win Bristol. And then you got to look at Texas. He won there in 2011, holding off Denny Hamlin. I think the chances of Trevor Bayne winning are very, very high. The 19 car has been really, really strong and very, very fast. And I think Trevor Bayne has a really great chance and a really great opportunity here where I could absolutely see him go on and win. I think he's going to be favored to win. I think he's got a great shot, a fantastic opportunity. And nonetheless, I'm just so happy to see Trevor Bayne back. I hope he goes full-time next year. And maybe if John Hunter does go full-time, Cup Racing takes over that 20 car, even though they're trying to get Ryan Truex also be full-time with the team next year. Just saying, imagine a live next year with Sammy Smith in the 18 car, Trevor Bayne, the 19, and then Ryan Truex in the 20. That would be a stacked lineup, and honestly, I kind of hope that ends up being a lineup next year, but nonetheless, so happy and so great to see that Trevor Bayne is back and driving the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Really awesome and really great stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Parker Kligerman. As it was officially announced yesterday morning, early morning as a matter of fact, that Parker Kligerman is going to be returning to Big Machine Racing in 2024, driving a 48 car once again. Parker Kligerman this year has been driving the number 48 car in 2023, which is the first time he's ran full-time in any NASCAR series since 2013 when he drove for KBM in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And let's be honest, in 2013, we drove for that team. He didn't do a great job, but did have a lot of really, really strong runs. But this year in 2023, driving full-time, he has done an exceptional and really, really good job. And I feel like Big Machine Racing is making the right decision to keep Parker around. It does help at a team as big funding and sponsorship of Big Machine Spike Coolers. Remember, the owner is Scott Borchetta. But also, they look at Parker Kligerman and think he's really talented. And I think Parker Kligerman has done a very good job this year. While the year did start off very, very slow, over the last 9 and 10 races, when you look at the stats, he's been getting faster and faster and faster. And I believe outside of maybe the race in New Hampshire, I think he's finished in the top 11 in the other 8 of the last 9 races. And he has a really good chance to make the playoffs this year. And honestly, I think he's a favorite to win tonight. He was really good at both Atlanta races. He was really good at Talladega earlier this year. And certainly, I think he's got a great chance and great opportunity to win before the end of the year. But I think going into 2024, this team's going to be able to build onto it, and they're going to have a great chance and a great opportunity to win next year in 2024. If he doesn't win this year in 2023, I certainly think he for sure 100% is going to win in the 2024 season. So I'm really happy about this. Again, I'm just so happy Parker's going to be coming back next year to run full-time with this team. I think he's got a really great chance, a really great opportunity, and I think he will have a very good opportunity to win in 2024. I predict he'll be an outside championship contender. I certainly think he's going to be a threat to do that, and very happy nonetheless to see that he is returning to Big Machine Racing in 2024 because he deserves it. He's done a really awesome and great job. Glad to see he's returning in the 2024 season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, over the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of talk and conversations about Hailie Deegan's future. And one bride that a lot of people were speculating was about StewartHaas Racing maybe going there in 2024. Well, Tony Stewart basically dropped all those rumors really, really quickly because he talked about Hailie Deegan on, I think, the Pat McAfee show or another podcast, if I'm not mistaken. And Tony Stewart addressed the possibility of signing Hailie Deegan and basically said, I praised her basically for how good of a dirt racer she is. She didn't praise her fame and stuff. He said she's a really good dirt racer, and everyone assumed that that meant that she was going to be driving in a car for us in 2024. But one quote that got very interesting at the end, he says, we have enough irons in the fire just trying to get through what we've got going on right now. And said that they said that confirms that she will not be going to SHR in 2024. That doesn't shock or surprise me considering all the stuff they're going to talk about SHR near the end of this episode. There's a lot of stuff going on with StewartHaas Racing. And let's be honest, I don't think Hailie Deegan completely deserves an opportunity to drive for SHR. I'm still thinking Riley Herbst and Cole Custer, anyways, are more than likely going to end up driving those cars in the 2024 Xfinity Series season unless things change over there. But I do think there's a really good chance and possibility that she is going to be in the NASCAR Xfinity Series full-time in 2024. So with SHR basically out of the question at this point, where could she go if she runs in the Xfinity Series? Well, there are some possibilities. SS Greenlight Racing. You have the 08 car that is a massive and a major possibility of happening. And while the 08 car hasn't been great, I would think maybe if they got alliance with SHR once again in 2024, I think that could really, really help giving her good top-notch equipment. Because remember, she also made her debut with SS Greenlight Racing in 2022 in the 07 car, and she got a top 15 finish. While she has struggled in the truck series, I certainly think going to Xfinity, I think she would do a much better job. I look at some of the other drivers like Jimmy Johnson and Ty Gibbs for a perfect example in that car, and Harrison Burton as well. But then you have other potential possibilities. AM Racing. AM Racing currently has Brett Moffitt driving for the team, and Brett Moffitt's done a really good job with that team this year in their first year. He's 15th in the points and has a really good chance to potentially make the NASCAR Xfinity Series Plus year if he does win in the next 2 weeks. So he's really pretty much out of the points conversation. He certainly can make it if he does end up winning a race, and I feel like that team has been getting faster and faster throughout this year as well. And then you have other possibilities. Maybe if like RFK decides to come back to Xfinity, perhaps that could be certainly an option. But going back to talk about Hailie Deegan, I certainly do believe that Hailie Deegan could be in the Xfinity Series next year, and I think she deserves a chance and opportunity. Now, has she done good in the Truck Series? No, absolutely not. She has not been good in the Truck Series at all. But I think if she went to the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year, I do believe that she would do a lot better and perform a lot better. So I'm just saying if there is openings there. I also mentioned RSS Racing. That's another team I look at that could be a potential possibility. But going back there, I want to mention the drivers because I compared to Harrison Burton. Harrison Burton was not very good in the NASCAR Truck Series. He goes to Xfinity the first year, wins 4 races. Well, he didn't get past the round of 12 because he got eliminated after a crash at Talladega. I do believe that she would do better like Harrison Burton did in Xfinity. Again, I don't think that she's going to go in there and win races, especially with the teams that she could be driving for, but I certainly think she would learn a lot more about respect, and I think she would drive a lot better. So I think that she will be in Xfinity next year, 2024. The only way that she'll be back in trucks is if she drove for Front Row Motorsports. I don't think she'll be back at ThorSport next year in 2024. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when it comes to Hailie Deegan. But I do believe in 2024 she'll be in the Xfinity Series, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next stories of today's episode as we're talking about Amazon and the Warner Brothers. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the upcoming TV deal, and the deal has not been signed currently at the moment. But according to Adam Stern, there's a couple reports he put out on Wednesday early afternoon. He said that Amazon and the Warner Brothers are competing to broadcast a new package of NASCAR races with the league trying to boost its overall revenue by bringing in more media partners. In addition to that, Warner Brothers aired NASCAR on TNT Network until 2015. The company's interested in televising races that could fill the gap in its sports schedule during the summer months after the NBA season is over. This is very, very interesting. Now, when you do look at the report that did come out, while people do mention TNT when it comes to the Warner Brothers, some people have also mentioned HBO Max, which is now Max. And let's be honest, Max may not be the greatest service in the world. Now, when it comes to competing for the TV deal, I think currently at the moment Amazon is the favorite to win the TV deal, because I think Amazon is going to outspend NASCAR. And look, I know a lot of fans are going to disagree with basically having a summer series on Amazon. But here's something you need to understand. In the next 2 years, you're going to see a lot more people leaving cable. Cable costs way too much. And cable is, again, it is a lot of money currently at the moment for these TV deals, right? Basically for TV. And a lot of people are cutting the cost because of the price. Cable is a dying breed, and streaming is growing at a rapid rate. If I'm not mistaken, Amazon has like 100 or 120 million users at that moment, and that number is increasing on a month-to-month basis. By 2025, you're probably going to have half the country who has an Amazon subscription. And while TV ratings may be down initially, I think with everyone heading over to Amazon, you're eventually going to have huge Amazon ratings in a foreseeable future. And again, it will attract that younger demographic. NASCAR is trying to attract the younger demographic, the 18 to 49, and they want to get that younger demographic to sport to survive long term. You look at what they've been doing. They've got basically the new Netflix series coming out in 2024, which are trying to capitalize on the Drive to Survive series, and they're trying to make that really, really successful. Again, I think Amazon is going to end up winning. We know that NBC and Fox, they're likely coming back in 2024. There are rumblings surfacing. There's a potential possibility there may be not a lot of race on cable maybe in 2024. Because I think, I've said this for a long time, I think every single NASCAR Cup Series race, if possible, should be on main broadcast network, because that's going to be good for TV ratings and more people are going to tune in. Obviously, I don't think they're going to get every race on the main network, but I think after next year, with next year being the last year of the current deal, I certainly think F1 might be off table in the next TV deal, and most races could be on the broadcast network. But I think it's going to be very interesting nonetheless to see what happens when it comes to Amazon and the Warner Brothers and who ends up winning. But if you had to ask me who I think is going to end up winning in this TV deal, I certainly think that it is going to end up being Amazon. They've been the favorite for a very, very long time. And again, while I do think that it's going exclusively streaming, I think simulcasting would be a really good option going into 2024, if that's a possibility. There have been talk that Amazon was going to pick up the whole Xfinity series. Now we know that CW, they're picking up the series going into 2024. Nonetheless, I think it's going to be very interesting to find out what happens in regards to that. But it sounds like at this point that Amazon is the favorite to pick up, but the Warner Brothers are trying to play a role in getting into the next TV deal. And I think it's definitely very, very interesting. I think we're not going to, because again, a lot of people think a deal could be done by the end of this year, but it doesn't sound like this deal is going to be done. And I think a lot of the reason why the TV deal hasn't been done at this point is because of the situation with the teams. They're wanting the charter system to be basically equal. And I think it's going to be not until next year until we find out what TV partners are actually going to be showing up. But I do think NBC and Fox come back next year. And I do believe that we're going to be seeing Amazon take over those rights for the summer series in 2024. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. It'll be a story that will continue to follow as time goes on. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major stories of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 and StewartHaas Racing. Now, we've talked about 2311 and StewartHaas Racing on this channel quite a bit over the last week. And a big reason why I've been talking about both these organizations is because of rumblings circulating around both organizations. Rumors have circulated over the last week that started last week in an article that came out from Lee Spencer from CashFence.com that 2311 Racing apparently has had conversations with Ford, and those conversations began at Michigan National Speedway. Apparently what she said on PRN is that the lawyer for that Denny Hamlin has spoken to multiple people at 2311 Racing. Now, she also mentioned that basically StewartHaas Racing could end up selling charters. Well, Jordan Bianchi went on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio yesterday and kind of did a little bit of a silly season recap. But the big thing to talk about is basically kind of reiterated those rumors that have been circulating that StewartHaas Racing could sell up to as many as 2 charters in 2024. Now, we do know that charters are very, very expensive. And according to Jordan Bianchi, those charters are worth $40 to $50 million. Kind of confirming what Lee Spencer said, that they're worth $40 to $50 million. He also reiterated that Aric Almirola is likely going to be retiring at the end of the 2023 season, meaning that Smithfield money is going to be gone, and obviously they've lost the Busch sponsorship, where that Busch sponsorship is going to be going to TrackHouse Racing in the 2024 season. But there's another big wrinkle into this. According to Jordan Bianchi, it sounds like there's a really good possibility that StewartHaas Racing may be leaving Ford at the end of 2024 and headed to Chevy in 2025. Let's break this whole story down step-by-step process. Let's start off with 2311 Racing to Ford. Now, why is this a huge possibility? Well, 2311 Racing is in an expiring contract currently at the moment with Toyota. Their contract goes along with Denny Hamlin's. Denny Hamlin has stated publicly that for him to sign his contract extension with Joe Gibbs Racing, that he needs to get 2311's extension done. And 2311 Racing's extension has not been done currently at the moment. So that's why Denny Hamlin has spoken about that. That's one of the reasons why he doesn't have a deal signed. He says the contract is ready to go for him to return to Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2024 season, but he needs a deal to be signed with 2311 Racing for that manufacturer deal to come in. Remember, it's been reported that Legacy Motor Club is going to be getting direct support from Toyota when they switch over to Toyota. And I think 2311 Racing is frustrated that they're not going to be getting direct support from Toyota. Because remember, 2311 Racing, they have an alliance with Joe Gibbs Racing. A big reason, of course, because Denny Hamlin's driving. But 2311 doesn't have a direct line. Then I think that's a huge reason why they're frustrated and they're having conversations. Now, it needs to be noted that 2311 Racing's also had conversations with other drivers, and that is Zane Smith. Zane Smith has been rumored to potentially be headed to 2311 Racing as well. But then let's go to the other wrinkle, StewartHaas Racing. 2311 Racing wants to pick up a charter going into 2024. And it sounds like if SHR is going to sell not just one but two charters, one of those charters could go over to 2311 Racing, and that potentially where Denny Hamlin ends up driving in 2024, but also Denny Hamlin could return to Joe Gibbs Racing next year. But going back to StewartHaas Racing, look, SHR selling two charters would not surprise or shock me. Look at StewartHaas Racing, how much they've struggled in the 2023 season, and they have not been good. Outside of Kevin Harvick, who's a generational talent, where he's in the top 10 in points currently at the moment, the rest of SHR has not been very, very good. But it's not because the drivers are bad at that team. You cannot tell me that Ryan Preece, Chase Briscoe, and Aric Almirola are bad drivers. Aric Almirola, I think, is still a pretty solid driver to this day. Ryan Preece was really good in the Truck Series last year and was solid in the Cup Series when he had good equipment. And I remember the times he actually had fast equipment, like at Richmond, he was actually really, really competitive, had an outside chance to win that race. And then, of course, you have Chase Briscoe, who's 31st, 32nd because of penalty. Chase Briscoe, remember, made it to the round of 8 last year, so it's not like Chase Briscoe is a bad driver overall. Because he won like 9 Xfinity races in 2020. I mean, come on, you can't tell me that Chase Briscoe is a bad driver. It's the equipment at StewartHaas Racing. If they were to downside and sell their charters, that team would be better. Let's transition to Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola retiring sounds very likely. This is the most certain thing that's been kind of talked about. And it's been kind of rumored now really since about April that Aric Almirola was likely going to retire at the end of this year, meaning that Smithfield money is going to go away, which is a huge reason why we know at this moment that we know at this moment that StewartHaas Racing is going to lose a lot of money. Smithfield brings a lot of money and funding in, so if they lose that Smithfield funding, Aric Almirola does end up retiring. That ride will not be available, and it sounds like from what we know is that the 4 and 14 cars are not going to be the cars that end up leaving, because Josh Ray will be driving that 4 car in 2024, and Chase Briscoe signed a multi-year extension. That would mean that Ryan Preece would likely be out of the 41 car in 2024, and that would mean the 10 car would not be available. Now, going back to the charter situation with 2311 Racing, we know that they might get one of the charters, but who could the other charter go to? Well, I have a little bit of a hypothetical. I'll mention RFK Racing. Now, RFK Racing currently at the moment, they talked about this in Michigan, but they said they were not planning to expand. But think about this RFK Racing. They do want to expand to 3 cars. Yes, the asking price is high, but they do have an alliance with Ford, and they're one of the higher-up teams at Ford. Could Ford be willing to help them out? That is certainly a possibility. But then I mentioned Zane Smith. Zane's been talking to 2311. But remember where Zane Smith made his debut in the Cup Series. He made his debut at RFK Racing in the number 17 car. So I think Zane Smith could also go to RFK Racing in the Cup Series as well. So I mentioned that. And then you go to the final thing, which is StewartHaas Racing to Chevy. There's been rumors about StewartHaas Racing switching back to Chevy now for about a year. And there's been rumors really since a lot of people got to mention this, but there's been rumors really since about the time that we heard that Josh Berry was going to be going to the 4 car in 2024. A lot of people have said that that could be a possibility where StewartHaas Racing switches to Chevrolet, back to Chevrolet, because Josh Berry has been a Chevy driver pretty much his whole entire career. So a lot of people are really surprised to be leaving Chevy to go to Ford, and he's still working with Chevy teams as substitution driver. He's, of course, going to be driving a 42 for Legacy Motor Cup tomorrow night at Daytona. Has been substituting for drivers like Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman as well this year. And I just look at Josh Berry, and I think I'm just a little surprised too on that. But I think StewartHaas Racing might switch back to Chevy because, let's be honest, I think Ford is really frustrated currently at the moment that StewartHaas Racing is struggling. They have not been good this year, and it's not like StewartHaas Racing's always been bad. The team has been was really good only 3 years ago. Remember, they won 9 races with Kevin, actually 10 races, because they won with Kevin Harvick 9 times and Cole Custer once, and all 4 cars made the playoffs. It's not like StewartHaas Racing was that bad that long ago. I just think there's been a lot of things that have been happening with the team, and I think Tony Stewart also has a lot of things coming in. People believe Tony Stewart eventually might get out of NASCAR altogether because Tony Stewart's got a lot of irons in the fire with other things. He's got a drag racing team he's going to. We know he's racing full-time in the NHRA in the 2nd division in the Top Alcohol Dragster Series. He's also got a sprint car team and also runs the SRX as well. And Tony Stewart, it's no secret, has been fed up with NASCAR over the last few years. So that's another reason why a lot of people believe that this could be happening. So it's one thing to continue to fall, one thing continues going on, but if SHR does sell 2 of their charters, that is going to make a lot of changes that could end up happening silly season, and it's one thing to fall as time goes on. But I think eventually Tony Stewart's going to get out, and also Gene Haas has got a Formula 1 team that he's focused on as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. We'll see if 2311 Racing truly does end up heading to 4, and we'll see what happens with silly season in 2024. So, that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on to notify when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Link in the description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think that StewartHaas Racing is going to sell 2 charters? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think 2311 Racing will head to Ford in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later this evening, we're going to have the NASCAR Xfinity Series race review from Daytona National Speedway. Tomorrow night, we're going to have the NASCAR Cup Series race review from Daytona National Speedway. The race will decide to make it to the playoffs. Sunday, we're going to have the NASCAR Truck Series race review from the Milwaukee Mile. And then on Monday, we're going to have a NASCAR news video along with the Darlington Xfinity race picks video. And then on Tuesday, will be the 2023 NASCAR playoff predictions on the channel as well. Got a lot of great content dropping on the channel that I cannot wait to share with you all. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.